Imagine a world without coins, bills, or digital transfers. A world where the concept of money, as we know it, did not exist. In this time, life moved slowly, guided by the rhythms of the land, the seasons, and the gentle needs of communities. People did not rush to the market with coins jingling in their pockets. Instead, they relied on patience, observation, and mutual understanding to meet their needs. The sun rises over villages and settlements, its soft light spilling over fields, forests, rivers, and hills. In these quiet landscapes, families tend gardens, gather fruits, care for animals, and prepare meals with deliberate care. Every action is measured, and every resource is valued for both its utility and its potential to be shared or exchanged. Without coins, people learn to recognize value in everyday objects. A sack of grain, a carefully woven basket, or a well-tended animal was more than just a possession. It represented sustenance, effort, and the potential for trade. Communities moved in harmony with these exchanges, each interaction carefully observed and respected. Trade was not about numbers, labels, or prices. It was about understanding what another person needed, what one could offer, and how both could benefit. A loaf of bread might be exchanged for a few eggs. A clay pot might be traded for a bundle of herbs. Every exchange required communication, patience, and a gentle awareness of fairness. Life in this world was slower and quieter. The absence of standardized money did not mean people were poor or unorganized. Rather, they cultivated a rhythm of generosity, observation, and careful planning. They learned to value not only the objects themselves, but also the effort, skill, and time that went into producing them. Even in distant villages, trade flourished through careful networks. Travelers carried goods between settlements, offering items in exchange for what they could not produce themselves. The flow of goods, ideas, and knowledge was slow, deliberate, and respectful, creating connections across landscapes without the need for minted coins. Imagine walking through a small settlement. The gentle clucking of chickens, the soft murmur of people negotiating exchanges, and the calm rustle of wind through the fields form a natural soundtrack. There is no hurry, no clinking of coins, only the measured rhythm of life and the quiet satisfaction of mutual support. In this introduction, we step into a world where value was human, tangible, and immediate. Every item had meaning, and every exchange was a small story of connection. Before coins, people relied on observation, trust, and patience to build communities that thrived on cooperation rather than currency. As we explore this world, notice how calm, deliberate, and gentle life could be. There is beauty in the simplicity of these exchanges, in the soft reliance on nature, craftsmanship, and community. Meals, clothing, tools, and everyday goods carried stories, effort, and quiet worth, long before coins appeared to define value. This is a world where trade was a dance of needs and offerings, not numbers or prices, where every transaction was personal, slow, and meaningful. As we move forward, we will see the many forms of value people recognized, collected, and exchanged in their daily lives, shaping a world that was both simple and deeply connected. Long before coins, bills, or digital transactions, people relied on barter, a gentle system of exchanging goods directly. In this quiet, patient world, trade was simple, immediate, and personal. Every exchange required observation, understanding, and trust, creating a rhythm of life that was slow, deliberate, and deeply human. Imagine walking through a village in the soft morning light. Farmers carry baskets of fresh vegetables. Freshly baked bread cools on wooden tables, and the gentle lowing of cows drifts from nearby pastures. In this world, what one person has, another might need, and careful, respectful exchanges ensure everyone benefits. Bartering required understanding the value of what each person could offer. A basket of apples might be exchanged for a handful of eggs. A potter could trade a small clay bowl for a bundle of herbs. Each trade was based on observation, patience, and the quiet negotiation of needs, rather than any standardized number or coin. The rhythm of the barter was unhurried. People walked slowly through the market or village square, examining goods, asking questions, and comparing what they had to offer. Every interaction was a moment of connection, where communication and fairness mattered more than speed or competition. Barter also encouraged creativity. When people did not have exactly what another needed, they found ways to combine or adapt items to create mutually beneficial exchanges. Perhaps a pair of hand-woven sandals could be traded along with a small pouch of dried fruit to balance the value of an offered pot of honey. This system required attention, mindfulness, and gentle negotiation. Communities thrived through this slow exchange. Trust became a quiet currency, more important than any object. People learned to recognize honesty, reliability, and generosity in their neighbors. A well-kept tool, a healthy animal, or a skill in weaving became valuable not only for its utility, but also for the relationship it represented. Even when traveling between villages, barter shaped life. Caravans and travelers carried goods long distances, offering them in exchange for what they could not produce themselves. These journeys were slow and deliberate, each transaction an opportunity to build trust, strengthen bonds, and share the quiet rhythm of life across the landscape. Bartering was also adaptive. Communities recognized local needs and resources, adjusting exchanges accordingly. In some regions, grains were plentiful, but pottery scarce. In others, salt or dried fish traveled as prized goods. This flexibility required careful attention and an understanding of the natural rhythms of land, labor, and production. Imagine the soft conversations that accompanied exchanges. Voices were calm, gestures gentle, and eyes attentive. There was no rush, no clinking of coins, only the careful rhythm of people negotiating and sharing, sustaining themselves and their neighbors through deliberate, mindful trade. Through barter, people learned lessons that extended beyond food and goods. They learned patience, empathy, observation, and the quiet art of giving and receiving. Each transaction reinforced a sense of community, trust, and mutual support that became the foundation of daily life. In this slow, deliberate world, trade was more than commerce. It was a rhythm of living. Every exchange, no matter how small, carried significance, connection, and calm satisfaction. Life before money was measured not in coins, but in relationships, effort, and the careful, patient exchange of goods that sustained both body and spirit. In a world before coins, food itself was often the most valuable form of wealth. Grains, roots, fruits, and livestock carried quiet abundance and nourishment, making them ideal for trade and exchange. People relied on these essentials not only to feed their families, but also to offer others something of genuine value in return. Imagine walking through soft morning light over gently rolling fields. Wheat sways in the breeze, barley stretches toward the sky, and small patches of legumes grow quietly. Each stalk represents care, effort, and patience. Harvesting these crops is a slow, deliberate act, performed with careful hands and mindful attention. Grains were treasured because they could be stored for long periods. A sack of wheat or barley might sustain a family through winter, and at the same time serve as a gentle medium for trade. Their value was not measured in numbers, but in their ability to nourish, sustain, and create security for those who held them. The rhythm of harvesting and storing grains brought families together. People moved slowly through the fields, cutting stalks, bundling them carefully, and carrying them to granaries. Each movement was mindful, creating a quiet harmony with the cycles of the land and the seasons. Livestock also held a quiet, steady value. Cows, sheep, goats, and pigs were essential for food, clothing, and labor. They could be exchanged for other goods, forming a slow, deliberate economy that required observation, trust, and patience. Every animal represented effort, care, and the promise of nourishment over time. A well-fed cow or a healthy goat could be traded for tools, pottery, or grains. Chickens and ducks provided eggs, while sheep offered wool for warm clothing and blankets. Livestock were not just possessions, they were living wealth, requiring attention and gentle care. The value of food and livestock extended beyond their immediate use. Grains could be planted, ensuring future harvests. Animals could reproduce, increasing their numbers and sustaining families for generations. These forms of wealth were connected to the cycles of life, growth, and the slow rhythm of the natural world. Trading food required mindfulness. A farmer might exchange a basket of wheat for a few chickens, a portion of cheese, or a handmade tool. Each trade involved careful consideration, ensuring that both parties felt satisfied and that the items exchanged reflected not just utility but effort and care. Food also carried symbolic value. Offering grains or fruits in trade could show respect, generosity, or goodwill. Livestock exchange during communal gatherings or seasonal festivals strengthened relationships, embedding social trust into the very rhythm of everyday life, even for long-distance trade. Grains and livestock were reliable. They could be preserved, transported, and shared in ways that created stability and calm. These slow-moving treasures traveled across valleys and rivers, connecting villages and communities in networks of patient exchange. Children learned to understand the value of food early. They observed careful planting, harvesting, feeding, and tending of animals. They saw how patience and attention to detail shaped not only meals, but the flow of exchange, the trust between neighbors, and the quiet rhythm of life itself. In this world, wealth was tangible, nourishing, and deeply connected to the land. Grains and livestock were not only trade items, they were a reflection of care, effort, and the slow, enduring passage of time. Each exchange was gentle, deliberate, and meaningful, sustaining both body and spirit in ways that coins could never fully capture. Life before money was measured not in coins or numbers, but in the quiet value of what could be eaten, shared, and preserved. Food and animals carried stories, patience, and connection, quietly shaping communities and the rhythm of life. In the quiet world before money, tools and utensils carried gentle value. A simple handcrafted knife, a clay pot, or a wooden spoon was not just an object. It was a reflection of skill, time, and care. People recognized the usefulness of these items and exchanged them thoughtfully, relying on observation and understanding rather than coins. Imagine a small workshop, sunlight spilling through narrow windows. A potter shapes clay slowly, pressing it gently with practiced hands. Nearby, a woodworker carves a spoon, feeling the grain and allowing the soft curves to emerge naturally. Each item is created with care, its value arising from both function and craftsmanship. Tools and utensils became particularly important because they made life easier and work more efficient. A sharp axe could help harvest wood. A well-crafted plow eased the turning of soil, and a sturdy pot allowed food to cook slowly and evenly. Their usefulness made them ideal for exchange, as everyone recognized their practical benefits. Trading these items required observation. A villager might exchange a basket of vegetables for a handmade tool, appreciating the skill and effort embedded in its creation. No coins were needed. Value was determined by utility, quality, and the needs of the community. Some tools were essential for daily survival. Knives, needles, and fishing hooks allowed families to prepare food, repair clothing, or gather resources efficiently. Their presence quietly shaped daily routines, supporting calm, steady work and gentle rhythms of life. Pottery was also widely valued. Bowls, plates, jars, and storage vessels carried food safely and kept it fresh. These items were often exchanged for grains, dairy, or small animals, linking practical need with trade in a slow, mindful system. The scent of clay, the warmth of fire during firing, and the careful shaping of each piece created a rhythm that was almost meditative. Even simple wooden tools or carved implements carried significance. They represented skill passed down through generations and patience in creation. Exchanging these items was a way to honor that care, ensuring that work and craftsmanship were respected and shared within the community. Trade involving tools and utensils often occurred at village gatherings or markets. The atmosphere was calm and attentive, with people examining items, feeling their weight, and appreciating their shape. Each interaction was deliberate, fostering trust and quiet social connection. In addition to practical use, tools sometimes held symbolic meaning. A beautifully carved bowl or a carefully polished knife could represent respect or goodwill, becoming a gift or offering that strengthened social bonds while also serving a functional purpose. Children observed these exchanges as part of their education. They learned to appreciate skill, patience, and attention to detail, understanding that value could reside not just in food or animals, but in carefully made objects that supported daily life. Over time, these exchanges shaped communities in subtle ways. People learned to negotiate fairly, recognize quality, and move slowly with care. Every trade reinforced connections, trust, and the rhythm of life, creating a world where usefulness and patience guided the flow of wealth. In this world, tools and utensils were more than objects. They were carriers of knowledge, skill, and gentle care. Their presence in daily life and trade reflected a slow, mindful approach to living, where every item had meaning and every exchange nurtured both practical need and quiet human connection. Long before coins jingled in pockets, salt quietly shaped the flow of trade and life. This simple mineral, essential to human survival, was treasured for its ability to preserve food, enhance flavor, and carry subtle value across villages, valleys, and even distant lands. Salt was a form of wealth, a gentle reminder that nature itself provided objects of both necessity and quiet significance. Imagine walking along a calm riverside where salt is collected from shallow pans. The sun warms the water, evaporating it slowly, leaving delicate crystals behind. These tiny glistening grains hold remarkable power. They can preserve meat and fish, season vegetables, and even influence the rhythm of trade between communities. Salt was valued because it sustained life. Without it, food spoiled quickly, and the body lacked essential minerals. This quiet necessity made salt a prized commodity, carefully stored, measured, and exchanged with mindfulness. Its importance gave rise to slow networks of trade, connecting people who had salt with those who needed it. In many regions, salt traveled long distances, moving gently along rivers, over hills, and across deserts. Caravans carried sacks of it, often alongside other goods, linking communities through calm, patient exchange. Each journey was deliberate, emphasizing the quiet effort required to move valuable resources safely. The exchange of salt was rarely hurried. People weighed the needs of both parties, considering the amounts required, the effort to gather or transport it, and the relative value of other goods offered in return. A few sacks of salt might be traded for grains, livestock, or tools, each transaction reflecting care, trust, and observation. Salt also held cultural and symbolic meaning. It was offered in rituals, shared during communal gatherings, and sometimes used to honor guests. Its presence in trade and daily life reminded people of the delicate balance between survival, generosity, and social connection. Even in the kitchen, salt's importance was clear. Sprinkled gently over vegetables, grains, or preserved meat, it enhanced flavors subtly and quietly. Its role extended beyond taste. It represented patience, preparation, and the skill to preserve and nourish life through careful attention. Children learned early about the value of salt. They observed its slow collection, the careful measurement for preservation, and the deliberate way it was shared or traded. These lessons were gentle introductions to concepts of worth, patience, and mindful exchange. Salt also influenced early economies by shaping routes of trade. Villages near salt sources became quietly prosperous, connected to distant communities through the slow movement of goods. The calm rhythm of supply and demand was built not on coins, but on careful observation, respect, and the steady needs of life. Even small amounts of salt could carry significance. A few crystals might sustain food for days or serve as a modest gift to a neighbor. Its value was tangible, practical, and quietly powerful, linking sustenance to social trust and cooperation. The gentle exchange of salt reminds us that value is not always obvious or flashy. It emerges from utility, care, and connection. Each crystal, each trade, reflects a patient understanding of what is needed, what can be offered, and how life flows slowly but steadily in harmony with resources. In a world before coins, salt was more than a mineral. It was a quiet treasure, a carrier of nourishment, social connection, and mindful trade. Its subtle presence shaped the rhythm of life, reminding communities that even the simplest resources could carry profound value. In a world without coins, furs, hides, and clothing quietly carried value, serving both practical and social purposes. These items protected bodies from cold, wind, and rain, while also becoming important mediums for trade. Their warmth was tangible, and their worth extended beyond comfort, linking communities through careful exchange. Imagine a small workshop at the edge of a forest. The soft rustle of hides and the gentle scratch of tools as fur is stretched, cleaned, and prepared fills the air. Skilled hands work slowly, shaping animal skins into garments, blankets, or wraps. Every movement is deliberate, each piece reflecting patience, care, and craftsmanship. Furs and hides were treasured because they were both durable and versatile. A thick bear hide could become a warm cloak, while softer animal skins could be fashioned into gloves, shoes, or simple coverings. Communities recognized their value, not just for warmth, but for their ability to sustain life in harsh conditions. These items often traveled far in barter systems. A hunter might exchange a set of soft rabbit pelts for grains, tools, or a basket of vegetables. Each trade required careful negotiation, observation, and trust, as both parties ensured that the exchange reflected fairness and practical need. Clothing also conveyed social and symbolic value. Certain furs might indicate status, skill, or connection to particular groups. Offering or receiving such items was a gentle way to honor relationships, creating bonds that extended beyond the material utility of the hides. The preparation of hides was a slow, mindful process. Skins were cleaned, stretched, and sometimes treated with oils or herbs. The soft scent of leather and the quiet rhythm of scraping and smoothing created a calm environment, reflecting the patient work that shaped both objects and community life. Even children were involved in small ways. They learned to recognize the quality of fur, understand the steps of preparation, and appreciate the gentle value of these items. Through observation and participation, they gained lessons in patience, respect, and the careful rhythms of trade. Hides could also be stored and preserved for long periods, making them reliable forms of wealth. They could travel with families or caravans, offering steady value in exchange for food, tools, or other necessities. Their portability and durability made them ideal companions in a world without coins. Trading clothing and hides often involved thoughtful gestures. A carefully sewn glove, a soft blanket, or a well-prepared cloak was not simply given. It was shared with intention, carrying respect and consideration. Every exchange reinforced social trust and the quiet rhythms of daily life. Even in distant villages, these items connected communities. Hides and furs traveled through valleys, along rivers, and across forests, creating networks of exchange that relied on careful observation, patience, and shared understanding. The flow of these goods shaped relationships as much as it did practical life. Furs and hides remind us that value is tied to utility, effort, and care. They were not just possessions, but reflections of skill, observation, and patience. Their gentle presence shaped the rhythms of work, trade, and social life in ways that coins later formalized, but never fully replaced. In this quiet world, clothing and hides did more than warm bodies. They carried nourishment, security, and connection. Each piece was a slow, deliberate gift of care, sustaining life, relationships, and the steady rhythm of community. Long before coins existed, shells and beads quietly served as symbols of value, often used in trade and social exchange. Their beauty, rarity, and portability made them ideal for gentle transactions, adding subtle charm and significance to the slow rhythm of daily life. Imagine walking along a soft, sandy shoreline. Tiny shells glisten in the sun, their delicate shapes shaped by waves over countless days. Each shell holds quiet uniqueness, a natural treasure easily carried and shared, admired for its gentle beauty as well as its potential worth. Beads, too, were cherished. Crafted from stone, bone, or early metals, they were often polished slowly by hand, their smooth surfaces reflecting patient effort and craftsmanship. Each bead represented care, skill, and time, carrying quiet value beyond its material form. These small objects were often used to facilitate exchanges. A string of beads could be traded for grain, a small animal, or a handcrafted tool. Shells might move between communities, offering subtle wealth that was easy to transport and share. The value was understood through observation and respect, rather than coins or numbers. Shells and beads also carried social and symbolic meaning. They could indicate status, achievements, or connections within a community. Exchanging them was not just about material gain. It was a gentle way of fostering trust, friendship, and social bonds. Crafting beads and polishing shells was a slow, mindful activity. People moved deliberately, shaping each piece carefully, enjoying the rhythm of hands working with small, intricate objects. This patience created a quiet, meditative environment where skill and effort were honored. Children often observed, and sometimes participated, learning the significance of each bead or shell. They understood that value was tied to care, attention, and the subtle effort required to create and exchange these items. Every small object carried lessons in patience and mindfulness. Trade involving shells and beads often connected distant communities. Caravans or travelers carried strings of beads across valleys, rivers, and forests, exchanging them for goods that were needed in far-off villages. These gentle networks of trade relied on trust, observation, and slow negotiation. Even in everyday life, shells and beads were appreciated for their beauty. They adorned clothing, tools, or simple containers, creating quiet elegance and personal meaning. This dual purpose, as decoration and medium of exchange, made them uniquely versatile. The calm presence of shells and beads in daily life reminded people that value could be found in beauty and utility together. They encouraged thoughtful observation, careful handling, and appreciation for both natural and crafted treasures. Through these small, portable items, communities learned to navigate exchanges, recognize skill, and honor relationships. Each shell and bead carried both practical and social significance, quietly shaping the rhythm of trade and human connection. In a world before coins, shells and beads were more than decorative items. They were gentle carriers of wealth, meaning, and connection, moving slowly through communities, creating bonds, and reflecting the careful, mindful pace of life. Long before coins were minted, people valued metals like gold, silver, and copper for their rarity, beauty, and versatility. These metals carried quiet weight in trade and exchange, serving as a gentle form of wealth that could be measured, stored, and transported across villages and regions. Imagine a small workshop where the faint glow of the sun reflects off smooth ingots of copper. Artisans handle the metal slowly, shaping it with careful hands. Every movement is deliberate, each piece carrying the patient labor and skill that made it valuable long before it became standardized currency. Gold was treasured for its warmth, beauty, and permanence. Its gentle glow made it desirable not only for trade, but also for adornment. Silver held similar appeal, often used in small ingots or jewelry, quietly signaling value without the need for coins. Copper, though more common, was appreciated for its practicality in tools, utensils, and simple trade items. These metals could be exchanged directly for food, livestock, tools, or textiles. Each transaction required observation and trust, as both parties needed to agree on weight, quality, and relative value. The absence of minted coins made these trades slow, deliberate, and deeply human. Transporting metal ingots was a careful process. Traders moved slowly along rivers, valleys, or forest paths, carrying them in cloth or leather wraps. Each ingot represented effort, patience, and a steady rhythm of work, linking distant communities through calm, mindful trade. The use of metals before coins also encouraged early forms of accounting. People learned to weigh and measure ingots carefully, keeping track of exchanges and stores. Simple marks or symbols sometimes indicated ownership or quantity, creating a quiet system of organization without modern currency. Children observed these processes with curiosity, learning the value of patience, care, and careful measurement. They saw how skill, observation, and attention to detail shaped the movement of metals, and how these objects could connect families and communities. Trade involving metals was often accompanied by gentle rituals or gestures. Ingots might be inspected slowly, their surfaces polished or weighed with careful hands, ensuring fairness and fostering trust between traders. These interactions were as much about connection as they were about material exchange. Even in daily life, metals influence the rhythm of work and social interaction. A well-crafted copper tool or silver ornament could travel between households, linking labor, craft, and trade in a steady, harmonious flow. The quiet presence of metal shaped both practical life and social bonds. The gentle glow of gold, silver, and copper reminded communities that value could exist in both beauty and utility. These metals encouraged observation, careful handling, and respect for skill, effort, and the natural resources that produce them. In the slow world before coins, metals carried weight not only in trade, but also in memory, relationships, and the rhythm of life itself. They were more than objects. They were markers of patience, trust, and the steady passage of time, quietly shaping the early economies of human communities. Before coins existed, people found gentle ways to record and store value using grains and simple tokens. Grains were carefully harvested and stored, while small clay or wooden tokens often represented the amount of grain held, traded, or promised to someone else. These methods created a quiet, organized rhythm of life that connected work, trade, and trust. Imagine walking through a small granary, the soft sunlight filtering through cracks in the walls. Bags of wheat, barley, and millet are stacked neatly, each one tied carefully to preserve its contents. The scent of dry grain fills the air, a calm reminder of nourishment, patience, and careful preparation. Tokens were often simple shapes made of clay or wood, marked with gentle symbols to indicate quantity or ownership. They acted as early receipts, allowing people to trade, store, or promise grain without carrying heavy sacks over long distances. Each token represented thought, care, and responsibility. These tokens were exchanged slowly and deliberately. A farmer might give a token to a neighbor in return for tools, livestock, or other goods, trusting that the granary held the promised grain. Each interaction relied on observation, honesty, and careful negotiation, creating a rhythm of trust that underpinned daily life. The use of grain and tokens also encouraged planning and foresight. People had to anticipate the seasons, the harvest, and future needs. Storing grain carefully, measuring portions, and keeping track with tokens became a quiet practice of mindfulness, connecting families and communities to the cycles of nature. Children often learned these skills gradually. They observed the stacking of grain, the marking of tokens, and the careful exchanges that followed. In these moments, they absorbed lessons in patience, observation, and the value of thoughtful work. Grain storage was also a form of security. Families and villages could rely on carefully preserved crops during harsh seasons or times of scarcity. Tokens allowed them to trade this security gently, extending its value beyond immediate needs to support wider networks of exchange. Even when grains moved between villages, the system remained deliberate and slow. Caravans carried carefully measured bags along winding paths, often with tokens accompanying them as proof of value. Each step reinforced trust, observation, and the quiet rhythms of trade that shaped community life. Tokens and grain exchanges were not just practical, they were social. They reminded people of responsibility, fairness, and connection. The gentle movement of these goods created opportunities to nurture relationships, strengthen trust, and honor the efforts of those who produce the food. The quiet beauty of this system lay in its simplicity. Grain nourished bodies, tokens preserved memory, and careful exchanges reinforced a calm, deliberate approach to life. Every action, from harvesting to trading, was imbued with patience and attention. Through the slow flow of grain and the careful use of tokens, communities learned that value was not always tangible in coins. It was tied to effort, reliability, observation, and the rhythm of seasons. These lessons shaped early economies and connected generations in subtle, enduring ways. Life before coins relied on these gentle systems of storage and symbolic exchange. Grain and tokens quietly carried meaning, connecting people to sustenance, trust, and the careful, patient passage of time. Each transaction was a small story, a reflection of the calm, deliberate world in which they lived. In a world without coins, livestock was a gentle form of wealth. Cattle, sheep, goats, and other animals were valued for food, labor, clothing, and even companionship. Their presence represented sustenance, care, and quiet stability, making them ideal for trade and exchange between families and communities. Imagine a small village at sunrise. Soft lowing and bleating fills the air as cows and goats move slowly across pastures. Children walk gently alongside their parents, learning to tend the animals with patience, attention, and care. Every step, every touch, carries meaning, reflecting the steady rhythm of life. Cattle were often the most prized form of wealth. They provided milk, butter, and cheese, while also serving as sources of meat. A healthy cow could support a family for months or even years, and when traded, it became a significant marker of value and trust. Sheep offered wool, soft and warm, suitable for clothing, blankets, and other textiles. Their presence allowed communities to create comfort and sustain themselves in colder months. Goats provided milk and occasionally meat, quietly supporting daily life in subtle but important ways. Trading livestock required careful observation. Farmers examined animals for health, strength, and quality before any exchange. The process was slow and deliberate, often accompanied by quiet conversation and gestures of trust. Every trade reflected not only material value, but also reliability and respect. Livestock could reproduce, adding another layer to their value. Each offspring represented patience, nurturing, and a gentle increase in wealth over time. Families planned for these cycles, understanding that life moved slowly and rewards grew gradually with care and attention. Even small animals had importance. Chickens provided eggs, ducks offered nourishment, and sometimes pigs were raised for meat. Each creature contributed to the steady rhythm of daily life, linking survival with careful management and mindful exchange. Animals also carried symbolic and social significance. Giving or trading livestock could strengthen bonds between families or signal goodwill between communities. Each transaction was a reflection of trust, cooperation, and the shared understanding that life was sustained together. Children learned early to recognize the value of animals. They watched and helped with feeding, herding, and gentle care. Through these experiences, they absorbed lessons in patience, responsibility, and the quiet importance of nurturing living wealth. Even across longer distances, livestock could be part of calm trade networks. Travelers and herders moved slowly between villages, exchanging animals for tools, grains, or textiles. Each journey required patience and careful observation, ensuring that the value of these living goods was preserved. The quiet beauty of livestock as wealth lies in its sustained presence. Unlike perishable goods, animals grew, multiplied, and provided continuous nourishment. They created a steady, deliberate rhythm of life that connected daily care to long-term security. In this world, wealth was measured in living beings, effort, and attention. Every animal carried sustenance, value, and a gentle connection between families, communities, and the land itself. Life before coins flowed slowly, patiently, and in harmony with the creatures that sustained it. Before coins became common, spices and aromatic herbs quietly shaped trade, connecting distant villages, forests, and lands. Their delicate flavors and soothing scents carried value beyond taste, offering warmth, preservation, and a gentle sense of luxury that traveled slowly across the world. Imagine a small market at dawn, where the soft aroma of dried herbs mingles with the scent of earthy soil and fresh grains. Bundles of cinnamon, cloves, and dried flowers rest carefully on woven mats, each one treasured for its ability to enhance meals and comfort the body. Spices were often rare, gathered from distant regions and traveled slowly along winding paths, rivers, and caravans. Their value was recognized for both their practical use and the subtle pleasure they brought. A few dried leaves could transform simple foods into something nourishing and comforting, carrying care from one community to another. Aromatic herbs were equally prized. Lavender, sage, rosemary, and thyme were used in cooking, healing, and rituals, quietly linking daily life to the natural cycles of the land. Their gentle presence reminded people of calm, patience, and the small joys of living in harmony with nature. Trade of spices required careful observation and slow negotiation. A bundle of saffron or dried herbs might be exchanged for grains, a small animal, or a crafted tool. Every interaction involved trust, attention, and respect for the effort it took to gather, preserve, and transport these delicate treasures. Spices also carried social and cultural significance. They were shared during festivals, given as gifts, or offered to guests, adding layers of meaning to their quiet material value. Each aromatic bundle strengthened connections, trust, and a sense of community. Children learned the subtle importance of these items by observing adults. They inhaled gentle scents, watched careful measurement, and noticed how small quantities could hold significant value. These experiences taught patience, mindfulness, and the quiet rhythms of early trade. The long journeys of spices connected distant lands, forming networks of calm, deliberate exchange. Caravans moved slowly, carrying their precious loads across valleys and mountains, ensuring that value was preserved and trust maintained along the way. Even in everyday life, spices enhanced more than meals. They symbolized care, patience, and gentle attention. Adding a pinch to food or tea was a simple act of mindfulness, reminding people that small, delicate efforts could carry meaningful weight in life and trade. The beauty of trading spices lies in its subtlety. Their value was never loud or urgent. It emerged from rarity, care, and slow movement. Communities learned to observe, appreciate, and nurture the delicate rhythms that sustain these gentle exchanges. Through spices and aromatics, people discovered that value could be fragrant, fleeting, and deeply connected to life itself. Each bundle carried nourishment, connection, and a quiet sense of abundance that flowed softly between hands and across landscapes. In this world, trade was measured not in coins, but in scent, flavor, and the patient effort that made each exchange meaningful. Spices quietly shaped communities, linking sustenance, care, and the gentle pulse of life before standardized money ever existed. Before money existed, trade often extended beyond a single village or settlement. People relied on barter networks that connected distant communities, carrying goods slowly across valleys, rivers, and hills. These exchanges created gentle ties, linking families and tribes in trust, patience, and careful observation. Imagine a caravan moving quietly along a winding path. Baskets of grains balanced on donkeys, bundles of herbs and textiles resting on soft cloths. Travelers walk deliberately, their pace unhurried, aware that the value they carry is fragile and must be handled with care. Trade between villages required patience and communication. People needed to understand what another community had, what they needed, and how much they could offer. These negotiations were slow, thoughtful, and often guided by gestures, eye contact, and careful listening. Goods traveled far before reaching their destinations. Grain from one valley might move to a distant village in exchange for pottery, tools, or animal hides. Aromatic herbs, furs, or shells could travel even further, connecting tribes who had never met directly, but who shared trust through careful, consistent exchange. The process encouraged communities to observe and record what was valuable. They learned the qualities of items, the needs of distant neighbors, and the subtle rules of fairness. Each trade reinforced social bonds, patience, and the understanding that wealth was measured not in coins, but in reliability and care. Children often accompanied adults on these journeys. They absorbed lessons in geography, negotiation, and responsibility. They watched how every step, every careful placement of goods, and every deliberate conversation created a slow, steady rhythm of life that connected communities across distance. Barter over distance also required adaptability. Traders adjusted the types and quantities of goods depending on the needs and resources of each village. They learned to anticipate, plan, and make subtle decisions, ensuring that each exchange was meaningful and fair. Even small communities benefited from these networks. A distant source of salt, a rare herb, or a finely crafted tool could reach villages that could not produce it themselves, quietly enriching lives and connecting people across landscapes. Trade caravans were not rushed. Travelers paused at rivers, valleys, and settlements, exchanging goods with care and ensuring that every item maintained its value. The pace of movement reflected respect for both goods and relationships, emphasizing calm and observation over speed or profit. Exchanges across distance were also moments of storytelling and connection. Travelers shared news, traditions, and small gifts, blending commerce with the gentle rhythms of community life. Each journey was as much about building trust as it was about moving goods. The quiet beauty of long-distance barter lies in its patience. Goods moved slowly, relationships developed gradually, and value was nurtured carefully. Communities learned that wealth and connection required attention, respect, and the gentle flow of time. Life before money was measured in these deliberate exchanges. Each journey, Each trade and each careful handoff reinforced trust, strengthened bonds, and created a soft rhythm that linked villages and tribes in a world guided by observation, patience, and quiet cooperation. In the world before coins, ceramics and pottery were treasured trade items, valued for both practicality and craftsmanship. Bowls, jars, and pots carried food, water, and grains, and their careful creation reflected skill, patience, and quiet artistry. These objects moved slowly through communities, connecting people through gentle, meaningful exchange. Imagine a small potter's workshop, sunlight spilling through an open window. Hands shape soft clay on a slowly turning wheel, smoothing the curves with gentle pressure. Each vessel takes time, care, and attention, becoming not only useful, but quietly beautiful. Pottery was versatile. Jars preserved grains, bowls held meals, and small containers stored herbs or salt. Their utility made them highly sought after in trade, particularly in communities that could not produce their own ceramics or sought unique designs from distant regions. Trade of pottery required observation and patience. A finely shaped bowl or a carefully glazed jar could be exchanged for grains, livestock, tools, or other handcrafted items. Every exchange involved assessment, trust, and deliberate negotiation, ensuring both parties felt the trade was fair and meaningful. The slow creation of pottery mirrored the calm rhythm of life. Clay needed to dry, be fired, and sometimes decorated. Each stage demanded time and mindfulness. Communities respected this process, understanding that the value of the pottery extended beyond the finished object to the effort and skill behind it. Children often observed these processes, learning the rhythm of shaping clay, the care required to prevent cracks, and the importance of patience in craftsmanship. Through these lessons, they absorbed the quiet principles of observation, effort, and thoughtful exchange. Pottery could also carry symbolic meaning. Certain shapes or decorations indicated status, local traditions, or social connections. Exchanging a decorated jar could signify respect or goodwill, adding a subtle layer of social value to its practical function. Even over long distances, pottery traveled. Traders carried jars and bowls carefully, often wrapping them in cloth or placing them in baskets, connecting villages, towns, and regions through deliberate, gentle trade networks. Each item carried both practical and relational value. The use of pottery in trade encouraged careful planning. Communities assessed their needs and the potential offerings of neighboring areas. They learned to balance utility, aesthetics, and trust, creating exchanges that were slow, meaningful, and rooted in observation. Pottery also connected work and daily life. It held food and water, supported cooking and storage, and sometimes became part of ceremonial or communal practices. Every vessel carried quiet significance, blending practicality with cultural expression. Trade in ceramics reinforced patience and fairness. It reminded communities that value is not always immediate or visible, but grows from effort, skill, and the gentle care taken in crafting and exchanging objects. Life before coins flowed through these slow, thoughtful exchanges. Ceramics and pottery were more than containers. They were vessels of trust, skill, and connection, shaping the rhythm of daily life and the movement of goods across gentle, deliberate networks. Before coins existed, textiles and weaving carried quiet value, connecting communities through trade, skill, and daily life. Woven cloth, soft fabrics, and carefully crafted garments were treasured not only for warmth and protection, but also for their beauty, durability, and the patient effort behind them. Imagine a small workshop at sunrise. Hands move slowly across a loom, guiding threads into intricate patterns. Each movement is deliberate, each weave a reflection of care and attention. The soft rhythm of weaving fills the room, creating a gentle, meditative atmosphere. Textiles served practical needs. Wool and flax became clothing, blankets, and ropes. They preserved warmth, protected bodies, and provided comfort in everyday life. Their usefulness made them ideal for exchange, as every community understood the quiet importance of cloth. Trade in textiles required observation. A finely woven scarf or a well-crafted piece of fabric could be exchanged for grains, livestock, or pottery. Each transaction was deliberate, involving careful assessment of quality, size, and purpose, ensuring fairness and mutual satisfaction. The process of creating textiles was slow and mindful. Fibers were spun, dyed, and woven over hours or days. Communities valued this patient labor, recognizing that each thread reflected effort, skill, and dedication, making the final product both functional and meaningful. Children often watched and helped in small ways. They learned to recognize quality, understand patterns, and appreciate the time required to produce textiles. These experiences taught patience, observation, and respect for effort, quietly shaping their understanding of value. Textiles also carried symbolic and social significance. Certain patterns, colors, or embroidery indicated status, traditions, or familial connections. Exchanging such textiles could strengthen bonds, communicate respect, or honor relationships between individuals and communities. Even in long-distance trade, textiles were important. Soft cloth and finely woven garments traveled along caravans and river routes, connecting distant regions. Each piece maintained its value because it reflected both utility and the care taken in its creation. The gentle presence of textiles in daily life shaped routines and relationships. They provided warmth, comfort, and protection, while also offering opportunities for creative expression and social connection. Every weave, fold, and stitch carried subtle meaning. Trade in textiles encouraged planning and foresight. Communities considered their own needs and the needs of others, exchanging fabrics thoughtfully to ensure practical benefits and maintain goodwill. This created networks of trust and patience, flowing slowly through generations. Textiles remind us that value can be tangible and delicate, functional yet expressive. Each piece reflected effort, skill, and observation, connecting life, work, and trade in a calm and deliberate rhythm. Life before coins relied on these patient exchanges. Textiles and weaving were more than materials. They were threads of connection, weaving communities together through trust, skill, and the gentle flow of time. Before coins existed, honey and natural sweeteners quietly held value in communities. They were not only nourishing, but also preserved foods, enhanced flavors, and carried subtle significance in trade and social exchange. Their gentle sweetness became a form of wealth, connecting people through care and patience. Imagine a quiet morning near a forest or a garden. Bees hum softly as they move from flower to flower, gathering nectar. The golden sunlight glimmers on tiny droplets of honey, a slow creation shaped by nature and careful human tending. Honey was treasured for its ability to preserve fruits, grains, and meats. A small jar could last for months, providing nutrition and comfort through colder seasons. This gentle reliability made honey an ideal item for trade, passed carefully between families and villages. Sweeteners like maple syrup, dates, or fruit pastes were similarly valued. Each offered a subtle taste of abundance, transforming simple meals into something comforting and memorable. Their rarity and usefulness gave them a quiet but steady worth. Trade in honey and sweeteners required attention and care. A jar might be exchanged for grains, tools, or pottery. Each trade involved observation, respect, and mutual understanding, ensuring that the exchange reflected effort, necessity, and gentle consideration. The process of collecting honey was slow and deliberate. Beekeepers moved carefully among hives, tending bees and harvesting without harm. Each step required patience, skill, and mindfulness, reflecting the same care that made honey valuable in trade. Children often learned about these treasures by observing adults. They noticed the delicate balance between taking and preserving, the effort needed to gather honey safely, and the quiet importance of patience and observation. Sweeteners also carried symbolic value. They were offered during celebrations, shared with guests, and sometimes used as gentle gifts to signify goodwill. Their presence strengthened social bonds while also nourishing the body. Even over long distances, honey could be transported with care. Wrapped securely, it traveled through villages, valleys, and forests, connecting communities in a slow, deliberate rhythm of trade. Every jar carried both practical and relational value. The quiet beauty of honey and sweeteners lies in their patience. It takes time for bees to create, for trees to produce sap, for fruits to ripen. This slow process reflects the rhythm of life, teaching communities that value grows through care and time. Through these gentle exchanges, people learned that wealth was not always metal or coin. It could be nourishment, sweetness, and the careful work that made life richer and more connected. Honey and sweeteners carried trust, attention, and subtle delight. Life before coins flowed with these patient trades. Sweeteners nurtured bodies, created connections, and shaped the calm, deliberate rhythms of early economies, reminding communities that even the simplest gifts could carry profound value. Before coins, shells and stones were often used as gentle tokens of trade, valued for their beauty, rarity, and portability. They moved slowly between communities, carrying meaning, trust, and the quiet rhythm of exchange, long before standardized currency existed. Imagine a calm shoreline at sunrise, where small shells glimmer softly on the sand. Each one is unique, shaped over years by the gentle movement of waves. Stones, polished by rivers or selected for color and shape, rest carefully in baskets, ready to be carried to distant villages. Shells and stones were used not only for decoration, but also as symbolic wealth. They could represent agreements, mark promises, or serve as evidence of trade. In this way, these small objects quietly carried both material and social value. Trade with shells and stones required observation and patience. A small string of beads or a carefully chosen stone might be exchanged for grain, cloth, or tools. Every trade depended on trust and careful assessment, ensuring that each party received a fair and meaningful exchange. The crafting of shells or stones into beads, pendants, or ornaments was slow and deliberate. Artisans polished, drilled, and shaped each piece with gentle attention, creating items that were functional, beautiful, and quietly treasured in the rhythm of daily life. Children observed these practices and sometimes participated, learning that value was tied to patience, care, and understanding. They saw how these small, enduring objects could connect communities and carry significance far beyond their material form. Even over long distances, shells and stones traveled slowly. Caravans and travelers carried them to distant settlements, linking communities through careful, deliberate networks of trade. Each object carried meaning, utility, and a sense of connection. Exchanging these items also involved social and cultural significance. Giving a stone or a shell could signify respect, friendship, or goodwill. Such gestures strengthened bonds while also reflecting the careful attention required in all trade before coins existed. The quiet beauty of shells and stones lies in their simplicity. They are small, natural, and enduring, yet capable of carrying weighty meaning. They remind communities that value can be subtle, patient, and grounded in observation and care. Trade in these tokens nurtured trust and connection. Every exchange was a moment of attention, reflection, and shared understanding, linking individuals and communities in a slow, deliberate rhythm of life. Even in daily life, shells and stones were appreciated for their gentle beauty. They adorned clothing, homes, and tools, creating subtle meaning while supporting practical exchange. In a world before money, shells and stones were more than objects. They were vessels of connection, trust, and quiet value, reminding communities that wealth flows through attention, patience, and mindful relationships. Before coins were widely used, tea, coffee, and other early commodities quietly shaped trade, connecting distant lands and communities through gentle exchange. These items were treasured, not only for their taste and aroma, but also for the comfort and warmth they brought to daily life. Imagine a calm morning in a small village. The soft steam rises from a freshly brewed cup of tea, carrying delicate fragrances that fill the air. Beans of coffee or dried leaves of tea rest in small baskets, carefully measured and preserved for trade or household use. Tea and coffee were valued for their rarity and ability to transform daily routines. A few leaves or beans could be exchanged for grains, textiles, or pottery, creating gentle networks of trust and connection between communities that might be separated by valleys, rivers, or forests. The process of preparing these commodities was deliberate and mindful. Leaves were dried, beans roasted, and each step handled with attention and care. This slow rhythm mirrored the calm approach to trade, where every item was treated with respect and appreciation. Children observed these practices, learning how small efforts and patience created items of value. They understood that wealth was not always metallic or visible, but could be subtle, carried in taste, aroma, and the effort of preparation. Trade in tea and coffee required careful measurement and assessment. Merchants and families evaluated the quality, freshness, and quantity of each batch. Every exchange relied on observation, honesty, and mutual respect, forming a quiet foundation of trust. These commodities also carried social and cultural significance. Sharing tea or coffee was a gesture of hospitality, friendship, and goodwill. Exchanging them strengthened social bonds, linking families, traders, and communities in a gentle rhythm of human connection. Even over long distances, tea and coffee traveled slowly but steadily. Caravans and traders moved deliberately, ensuring that each leaf and bean reached its destination intact. The value of these commodities depended not only on rarity, but also on care and patience during transport. The presence of tea and coffee in daily life provided warmth, comfort, and small moments of joy. They offered gentle rituals that encouraged mindfulness, reflection, and a quiet appreciation for the connections that trade created. Through these early commodities, people learned that wealth could be subtle, sensory, and deeply connected to daily life. A small leaf or bean carried nourishment, connection, and trust, quietly shaping the rhythm of communities. Trade in tea, coffee, and similar items was slow, deliberate, and intentional. Every cup, every leaf, every bean reflected the patience and care of both producers and traders, linking distant lands in calm networks of exchange. Life before coins was enriched by these gentle commodities. They nurtured bodies, fostered connection, and carried subtle value, reminding communities that the quiet efforts of preparation and trade could sustain both life and relationships. Before coins existed, tools and instruments quietly carried value, connecting communities through practical need and careful exchange. Axes, hoes, knives, and other handmade implements were essential for survival, and their creation and trade reflected skill, patience, and thoughtful observation. Imagine a small workshop where the faint glow of the morning sun touches a row of carefully shaped tools. Hands smooth wooden handles, sharpen stone blades, and polish metal surfaces. Each tool is crafted with deliberate care, reflecting both utility and quiet artistry. Tools were valuable because they supported daily life. A sturdy hoe could prepare fields for planting, a sharp knife could process food or materials, and a well-made axe could shape wood for building homes and storage. Each item contributed directly to survival, making it a treasured medium of exchange. Trade in tools required careful observation and assessment. A crafted axe or knife might be exchanged for grain, livestock, textiles, or pottery. Every transaction depended on trust, fairness, and an understanding of the skill and effort invested in producing the item. The creation of tools was slow and mindful. Artisans measured, shaped, and tested each instrument, ensuring it was durable and effective. Communities valued this work, recognizing that the labor behind each tool added to its quiet worth in trade. Children observed these processes, learning the connection between effort, utility, and value. They saw how careful work created practical items that could be shared or traded, and how patience and skill shaped both objects and social bonds. Even over long distances, tools traveled between communities. They were carried slowly, often wrapped carefully to prevent damage, connecting villages and regions through deliberate, thoughtful networks of exchange. Each tool represented utility, trust, and careful planning. Tools also carried social and symbolic significance. Offering a well-crafted implement could demonstrate respect or goodwill, strengthen relationships, and convey appreciation for skill and effort. Trade in tools thus combined practicality with social meaning. The quiet value of tools lies in their usefulness. Unlike decorative items, their worth was tangible in daily life, providing comfort, sustenance, and protection. Yet their creation required patience, observation, and attention to detail, reminding communities that value is often nurtured slowly. Trade in early instruments encouraged planning and foresight. Communities considered which tools were needed, how they could be exchanged, and how their production reflected both skill and care. Each transaction reinforced trust, cooperation, and gentle rhythms of life. Even in mundane tasks, tools carried significance. Each use reminded people of the hands that created them, the labor invested, and the trust embedded in every exchange. They quietly shaped work, trade, and social connections. Life before coins flowed through these patient exchanges. Tools were more than instruments. They were carriers of survival, skill, and connection, moving slowly through communities and shaping the deliberate rhythm of early economies. Before coins existed, ceremonial objects quietly carried value, connecting communities through ritual, respect, and exchange. Items like carved figurines, decorated staffs, or symbolic tools were treasured not only for their spiritual or cultural significance, but also for their ability to facilitate trade and strengthen social bonds. Imagine a quiet clearing in a village where soft sunlight illuminates carefully carved wooden figures and gently polished ritual objects. Each piece reflects patient craftsmanship, carrying stories, symbols, and meaning from one hand to another. These ceremonial objects were often used in important gatherings, ceremonies, or rites of passage. They held quiet authority, representing respect, trust, and communal values, while also functioning as mediums of exchange when necessary. Trade involving ceremonial items required careful attention and thought. A carved figurine or ritual staff could be exchanged for grains, tools, or textiles. Every transaction was deliberate, reflecting not only material value, but also social significance and mutual understanding. The creation of ceremonial objects was slow and mindful. Artisans carved, polished, and sometimes decorated each piece over days or weeks. Communities recognized the effort and skill involved, giving these objects a gentle but enduring worth that extended beyond their practical use. Children often observed these processes, learning that value could be tied to symbolism, patience, and careful craft. They saw how meaningful items moved between families and communities, fostering trust, respect, and social connection. Even distant communities could trade ceremonial objects. Carefully wrapped and transported, these items traveled along rivers, valleys, or trade routes, quietly linking communities that shared cultural practices, respect, and trust through deliberate exchange. Ceremonial objects also reinforced social bonds. Exchanging a carved figure or decorated staff could signify alliance, goodwill, or shared responsibility, strengthening networks of trust and cooperation that were essential to community life. The beauty of these objects lay in their subtlety. They carried symbolic meaning, cultural identity, and practical worth simultaneously. Each piece reflected the calm, patient rhythm of life and the thoughtful attention of its maker and owner. Trade in ceremonial items encouraged observation, reflection, and respect. Communities learned that value could be intangible, rooted in trust, skill, and shared cultural understanding, quietly shaping the flow of exchange. Even in everyday life, ceremonial objects held meaning. Their presence reminded people of relationships, shared histories, and the careful attention needed to sustain both practical and social wealth. Life before coins was enriched by these deliberate exchanges. Ceremonial objects were more than decorative or symbolic. They were vessels of trust, connection, and quiet value, gently linking people across space and time. As communities grew and trade expanded, the gentle systems of barter, tokens, and valued goods slowly gave way to the invention of coinage. The quiet rhythms of exchanging grains, livestock, tools, and handcrafted items eventually revealed the need for a more standardized and universally recognized form of wealth. Imagine a small village where traders once carried baskets of grain, strings of beads, or jars of honey across valleys. Each journey was slow, deliberate, and filled with careful negotiation. While these exchanges were meaningful and rooted in trust, they required time, attention, and patience that could not always keep pace with growing trade networks. Coins emerged as a simple, portable, and consistent way to represent value. Crafted from metals like gold, silver, and copper, they offered uniformity that eased trade over long distances. A single coin could replace the careful counting of grain or the assessment of a jar of honey, carrying quiet authority and reliability in every transaction. The shift toward coins did not erase the lessons of barter. Communities retained the values of patience, observation, and trust, applying them now to exchanges that moved more swiftly. Coins became a gentle tool, easing transactions while still requiring thought, honesty, and care in their use. Coins also allowed for greater complexity in trade. With a standardized medium, traders could exchange goods of varying sizes and types without the cumbersome need to weigh, count, or compare items carefully. The rhythm of trade became more efficient, yet communities maintained the deliberate attention that had always guided exchange. Even as coins spread, the old systems persisted in parallel. Tokens, shells, and beads continued to hold symbolic or local value. Livestock, honey, and crafted items remained cherished for their practical and social significance. Coins complemented these systems, adding ease without erasing the deeper lessons of earlier exchanges. Children in these communities learned the dual rhythms of old and new. They observed how coins could simplify trade, yet also recognized the patience and attention inherent in exchanging natural goods, handcrafted items, and carefully nurtured commodities. The invention of coinage also fostered connection between distant regions. Traders could carry a small pouch of coins instead of heavy sacks of grain or bundles of textiles, traveling further and linking more communities in calm, deliberate networks of exchange. Coins introduced a subtle form of consistency. They allowed value to be recognized universally, yet they still required careful thought. Counting, storing, and exchanging coins encouraged mindfulness, honesty, and responsibility in ways reminiscent of older barter systems. The quiet shift toward coinage reflects the natural evolution of human communities. As trade grew, so did the need for simplicity and uniformity, yet the underlying lessons of patience, trust, and observation remained central. Coins became a gentle tool, guiding the flow of wealth without erasing the slow, thoughtful rhythms of earlier life. Through the creation and use of coins, people discovered that wealth could be both practical and portable. The gentle elegance of standard currency made trade easier, connected distant lands, and preserved the careful balance of trust, patience, and observation that had always shaped human exchange. Life before and after coins shares a common thread. Both eras emphasize the importance of careful attention, trust, and deliberate action. While coins simplified transactions, the deeper principles of thoughtful exchange, patience, observation, and respect continued to quietly guide communities through the gentle rhythm of daily life. As we look back on the gentle flow of life before coins, it becomes clear how much humans relied on patience, observation, and trust. Bartering grains, livestock, tools, and handcrafted items created a world that moved slowly, deliberately, and thoughtfully. Communities were connected not just by goods, but by relationships, care, and quiet understanding. The invention of coinage introduced a subtle shift. Suddenly, trade became simpler, more portable, and more standardized. Yet the essence of exchange remained rooted in the values that had guided humans for centuries: attention, fairness, and respect. Coins became a tool to carry value across distances, linking people and places that had once been separated by rivers, valleys, and mountains. Money changed the pace of life. Exchanges that once required careful negotiation, observation, and effort could now be completed more efficiently. Yet, even in this new era, the lessons of the past endured. Wealth was still meaningful only when paired with trust, responsibility, and the gentle patience learned through generations of barter. Through coins, communities discovered the ability to plan for the future in ways that were previously impossible. Trade expanded, distant lands were connected, and new opportunities arose. But underlying all these developments was a quiet continuity, the understanding that value is nurtured slowly, through care, attention, and deliberate action. Looking back, we can appreciate the subtle beauty of both worlds. The era before money taught us that wealth is more than a number. It is effort, connection, and shared responsibility. The era of coinage showed that standardization can coexist with these human qualities, allowing trade to flourish while preserving the gentle rhythms of community life. In the calm reflection of history, we see that money did not erase the slow, thoughtful exchanges of the past. Instead, it built upon them, transforming the ways people connect, trade, and care for one another. It reminds us that even in a world of speed and convenience, the quiet virtues of patience, trust, and mindfulness remain timeless. And so, as we drift through the story of human exchange, we can rest in the knowledge that every coin, every token, every grain, and every handcrafted item carries with it a quiet reminder. The value of life is measured not only in material wealth, but in the care, observation, and trust we share with one another.